Ohio State, Penn State is where we will be this Saturday. High noon, much to the chagrin of the locals up there. High noon kickoff, the whole new Saturday tour. We'll be in town. And I got asked something today. I was doing a radio hit, and I got asked, who has more pressure here? Which head coach has more pressure? And the words, "Are you kidding me?" came out of my mouth. It didn't take 2 nanoseconds for me to realize that it's Ryan Day. To which said host replied, "Well, how could you say Ryan Day? James Franklin's the one that's 1-12 against top 5 teams lately." And I said, well, that's already baked into your expectation of him. I mean, if he loses another one, your opinion doesn't change of him. But Ryan Day, I had Jesse look this up. He was 15-4. He was on a 15-4 run against ranked teams, and he's 2 out of 5 in his last 7 in that spot. A lot of that's the Michigan game, obviously, but lost the Oregon game already. This team had national championship aspirations. I picked them to win the national championship, and if they've already got 2 losses by early November, dude, he's feeling way more heat. All due respect than James Franklin's feeling. I'm not saying it's insignificant for Penn State, but my goodness, Penn State loses Saturday and Aller doesn't play. What are we saying? We're saying they played a competitive game. They lost to the team they've already been losing to. They lost with their backup quarterback. And if it's competitive, you could reasonably sit there and say, what if they had their starter? That's not, relatively speaking, that's not the kind of pressure for James Franklin that Ryan Day will face. Both teams are off a bye. Ohio State has won 7 straight. They've dominated this series. So that's your backdrop. Okay, now let's raise the curtain on the game a little bit. I am very interested in the prep for Ohio State here. Aller, obviously the much better passer. We don't know if he's going to go. And if he goes, what can he give Penn State? Is 80%? Is 90% good enough? Pribula, when he's been in that game, when he was in the game last week, the run game opened up. Thought it was a really, really big get-off-the-deck moment for Penn State. And there is a game script. There's a way this game could play out where Bo Pribula plays, maybe he starts, and the game script is not one where Ohio State gets out to an early lead and you're playing catch-up with them. It could be that there's a game script that sees their backup give them a better chance to win. Not over the course of the season, but maybe over the course of an afternoon. And even last week, he comes in and they come from behind and win. And so what I wonder is, Ohio State this year has allowed 8 plays of 20. Well, in the Oregon game alone, they allowed 8 plays of 25-plus yards. And that is where Drew Aller can bite you. He is a much, much more capable passer, probably, than Pribula. So if I get in that kind of game where Ohio State is scoring on me and I've got to match scores, it's not an ugly rock fight of a game, I need my starter. I got to have Aller in there. But if it is the kind of game that I can drag out into the mud a little bit, if it is the kind of game where I'm getting Ohio State off the field, and if it is the kind of game where I'm finding a little success on the ground, maybe a little bit more than I thought I would, maybe a little bit more than my stat profile at the beginning of the season indicates that I should, I got no problem with Penn State riding the backup, and not by choice per se. I'm just saying if they have to go with him, it's not the end of the world. Trace McSorley light being thrown around up there. Not my words, my Penn Staters' words. So here's the thing about Ohio State. Their defense and their run game's got to step up. Just point blank. I don't really take too kindly to looking at the elite teams that can't run the ball. Georgia's one of them. Ohio State's one of them in the last game. Bama's been one of them. I don't take very kindly to them having all the advantage in the world, all the resource, all the recruiting edge in the world, and by midseason, us just saying, well, they can't run the ball. We'll figure out how to run the ball. And here's my reason why I treat you that way. You're Ohio State. You've got 2 studs in the backfield, and while your offensive line may be a relative weakness for you, it shouldn't be. So you got one of the highest paid staffs in the country. You've invested as much as any team has in your roster for this year. You got to figure out a way to run the ball. They didn't run well last week. Yeah, I watched it too. It's not always a copy and paste week over week in this sport. They didn't run well against Penn State last year. I don't need you to run for 9 yards per carry. I don't need 225 on the ground, but you got to get something. You got to get something on the ground. You remember a couple of years ago, last time they played this game in State College, actually, JT Tuimoloau took the game over. Ohio State won the game because defensively they had a guy take the game over. That kind of stuff should be on the table for you. Running the ball well enough should be on the table for you. And I'll tell you why those things matter, even if you don't take over the game, even if you don't run the ball anywhere better than, 3.9, 4 yards per carry, that'd actually be an acceptable afternoon to me. But even if you don't do anything more than that, what you at least do is you keep game control somewhat neutralized or maybe even slightly in your favor, and it sets you up to flip the field, and that's important every week. But it's really important against Penn State because they are 123rd in starting field position in the country, and I wish we could say we discovered that stat on our own. I do. But it was Parker. It was our buddy over at Stats of War. Credit where it's due. It is a true stat, though. He does not give out fake stats, so it's a true stat. So this will come down to quarterback. I actually don't think it comes down to the Penn State quarterback situation. I think the Ohio State quarterback situation, Will Howard, namely, is what it comes down to because it is really about him finding matchups. I do not foresee some world, no matter what he said at the microphone last week and how personally he takes this game, in terms of real X's and O's football, I don't see a world where they just methodically move down the field all afternoon. That would be wonderful, and you could prove me wrong and do it. I don't think it's that kind of game for Ohio State. So what it could be, though, is kind of like last week when you broke a couple of big explosive plays because you've got incredible athletes all over the place, especially on the perimeter. That's what it could be. What it could be is quick pop pass, Jeremiah Smith makes someone miss, and 60 yards later he's in the end zone. You just do that a couple of times, or you just get down in the red zone, get down in plus territory a couple of times, enough to kick field goals. Some people say field goals don't win games. Touchdowns don't either. Points win games, and they do give you 3 for a field goal. So enough field goals will win a game, especially in what figures to be maybe a low-scoring game. I can see the explosive passes in an otherwise inconsistent offensive afternoon being the difference. And that's what I need from Will Howard. Protect the ball. You're vulnerable at the tackle position. You know that. I know that. We all know that. And so that's up to your coaching staff to put you in a plus situation enough. And that's up to your other guys to make plays for you. Let's take a look at what the model thinks, Colin. The FanDuel number right now, for the record, is Ohio State minus 3.5. Model thinks that there's a little bit too much love being given to Ohio State. The model has Ohio State by 1. Ohio State minus 1. Ohio State, the second they lost that Oregon game, I thought would come in here and win this. What I pictured is this team just lost to Oregon, really hard-fought game. They may have lost by 1 point to the best team in the country for all we know. And I thought to myself, they got another game on the road in a couple of weeks. They didn't handle this environment very well. Now, they were competitive, but the environment got to them a little bit. And I know you guys want this thing to kick off at night, and it's not, but this environment will probably affect Ohio State a little bit. And so I started thinking to myself, that's going to be tough. Everyone keeps talking about rematch with Ohio State and Oregon, but checking my watch, they still have to go to Penn State? Yeah, they sure do. And then I thought to myself, but they're going to find a way to win that game. Somehow, some way, they'll crawl over broken glass. They'll find a way to win that game. And I haven't gotten myself off that. Don't have a lot of confidence in it, but I haven't gotten myself off that default position. And I've also come to adopt the ideology that if Penn State's going to pull it off in these moments, I am going to be proven wrong by them winning it. Because I've backed them a few times in these spots, and they've let me down a little bit. I'm not bitter about it, but I have resolved after last year's fiasco where I picked them to beat Michigan. I said, you know what? I'll pick the other guy, and eventually Penn State will win one of these things, and maybe it's this weekend. But I'm going to be proven wrong by picking the other guy instead of continuously picking Penn State. So if that's the motivation, I got good news for James Franklin. I got good news for Penn State. I will take Ohio State to win, and I have no thought on the spread. I'll take them to cover, I guess. Could be one of those Ohio State wins and Penn State covers sorts of things. But there's a little added fuel because I'll be up there Friday and Saturday. Love those guys. Nothing personal. But I will take the other guy to win, Ohio State to win and cover. And you know what? If you end up winning, credit me for the little added layer of motivation there.